All right. So I'll introduce myself real quick. My name is Zach Jacobs. I was one of the founders of FightForOurFunds, also a victim of the whole Synapse brokerage, bankruptcy and everything that unfolded thereafter. And then we have Nicklaus Richmond here. So Nicklaus, if you want to introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself and how you got in this mess.
Sure. Yeah, so Nick Richmond, I'm from Kansas, and have been fighting for this for a little over a year. I originally opened a savings account with Yotta in 2021. The goal at that point was saving money for a down payment for a house, and so was putting a little bit of money in there with every paycheck to build up a house fund. I'd heard about it from a couple of friends. I'd seen a couple of financial advisors and financial YouTube channels that had recommended it. And so that kind of sparked my interest. I'd done online savings accounts in the past and everything had gone pretty well. And with all the website and the assurances of FDIC insurance, I figured it was an easy way to save a little bit of money for our home down payment. Everything went well. We were using it pretty frequently for more than 2 years and with no issues. And then in I believe it was May 2024, I got an email that ACH transactions had been suspended. And so was a little bit confused by that, and doing some more looking and reading. It sounded like there was the issue with Synapse bankruptcy and the agreement between Evolve and Synapse. And so that definitely caused some concern. Thankfully for us, I know I've heard a lot of other terrible stories. Thankfully for us, we had closed on our house October of 2023. And so the bulk of our funds that we'd been saving were safe, but we still were left with about $13,000 locked up in a savings account that we didn't have any access to. So starting off, talked to Yotta. They gave recommendations to talk to the Federal Reserve and the FDIC. So we did that. Tried to talk to Evolve, and in the beginning was able to talk to some of their customer service representatives, and they didn't really do much as far as help there. It kept forwarding us to phone numbers at Synapse that were nobody answered, nobody monitored. Eventually just, dead call. With nothing really going, I decided to also file a police report with the FBI, since they take care of financial crimes. Didn't know if this was something that was in their jurisdiction or not, but it seemed to me that that could be part of their wheelhouse.
Were you taking these steps? Were you sort of in the wave of on Reddit and with Fight for Our Funds when we were sending the letters to FDIC, sending the letters to the Fed, to the or were you doing this completely on your own?
So the Federal Reserve, the FBI thing I did on my own before I'd kind of found Fight for My Funds on Reddit. And so those were the two things I'd seen. And then I found you guys and pretty much followed along steps, again, with what you were recommending with CFPB and the letters to Congress people and everything. So kind of following those along the way after I found that as kind of some other avenues that we might have a chance to make enough noise to see if somebody could help us out. So
did you hear a peep from the FBI or the Federal Reserve?
The Federal Reserve, actually one of the Federal Reserve officers reached out to me because it was within the first few days of it being frozen. And he kind of told me, this is, off the record, I don't have an answer for you, but he's like, this is a mess. The way that these work, with how this Synapse middleman works and Yotta, he's like, this is a loophole in FDIC coverage that we've never really gone down. And he said, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. And he said, it's probably going to take quite a while to get anything back. And so he was, like I said, fairly candid with that phone call, letting us know, what was going on, even though he didn't really have any real information, and that the Federal Reserve, it wasn't clear that they had power to do anything about it, or the FDIC.
So you're the only person that's really interesting. I'm glad I asked that. I haven't heard anyone hearing. It sounds like you were so early that there weren't thousands of
Right.
complaints yet, but that is the first time I've heard anyone having heard from them, and the sound they were speaking so candidly with you.
Yeah.
That quickly changed, I think, when thousands of people filed complaints.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, that I'd had to look at the date, but that was it was probably in May of 24. It was pretty early.
Wow. Okay.
The FBI as well. I talked to, because they're headquartered in Memphis and West Memphis, Evolve Bank. That's the branch I reached out to and talked to that agent a couple of times, and they seemed interested to look into it. Again, whether or not they had any power to do anything about it. But I mean, we kind of had the conversation that if, I walked into a bank and had money that didn't belong to me, the FBI would definitely be interested. But, the bank having money that didn't belong to them was definitely a little bit more of a gray area. So yeah, like I said, I kind of followed along with the Fight for Your Funds and at least got some, like I said, the senators and representatives. I had one representative that seemed fairly interested, and the aide, one of his aides reached out and asked for more information a couple of times, but that's all about all the further that went. But yeah.
So when you said around 13,000, right?
Yeah, correct.
So when it came time for the reconciliation process and people started logging in to see if,
sure,
spin the wheel, the lottery of, did I get any money back? How did that end up? There's the round 1 and then round 2. So how did that work out for you guys?
Yeah. So round 1, I believe, is like November last year. I got the email and logged in, and they said they had 0 of my funds. So yeah, like I said, that was definitely pretty crushing. Then we finally got to the end of it, finally got this all reconciled when all the other banks involved had come up with reconciliation months before, and they finally, stumbled through it and showed that I had nothing in there. So yeah, that was pretty big. And so after that, thinking that I needed to show some type of proof to maybe do a lawsuit or some type of appeal, I reached out to our banks. And so I own a small business and do the payroll. And so I know that the routing number that I put in for direct deposit, all my funds were sent in just direct deposit from payroll, belonged to Evolve Bank. When you put it in our payroll system, you put in the routing number and it pops up Evolve Bank next to it. It didn't pop up Yotta. And so, you knew where you were sending it. So I was able to reach out to our bank, and they gave us the ACH trace numbers for like the last year of all my deposits that showed, proved that they went from my business bank to, Evolve Bank and Trust. Kind of that was going to be my argument. That's the only place I've sent the money. They claim it went to a different bank. But that's the only place it's ever gone. And then it was into January this year, I filed small claims. Thankfully in Kansas, the small claims limit, they had a bill that passed like middle of 2024 to raise the limit from $5,000 to $10,000.
Oh,
so
nice.
I thought, okay, at least this would be, mostly making whole by doing that. So we filed a small claims suit at that point. And I don't know exactly when the second round of money found came, and like I said, whether it's coincidence or not, but I know that Evolve was served with the court date for my small claims case on March 1st. And March 5th, I got an email that more funds had been found, and they had found basically everything that I had in there. And about a week after that email, I got a personal email from Evolve Bank and Rust Consulting asking if I would please drop my small claims suit, since now they'd returned all my money. So that, like I said, it may have been a coincidental timing on how things came out, but I thought it was kind of curious that as soon as they got summons to court, it was they've all of a sudden found it. So
yeah. So in that story, again, we have to assume that it is coincidence,
right.
But it is the exact same story I had, which mine was get an attorney, which I probably spent 100 hours talking to attorneys over the past year, because this is such a complicated. People hear bankruptcy and they just say, "Oh, no, I don't do bankruptcy."
Right.
And so, yeah, I had almost an identical story of hired a lawyer, sent a demand letter, and funds are found. So again, probably coincidence, but it certainly leaves you scratching your head a little bit of, man, you know, hearing the when someone lawyers up to all of a sudden the money is found, it just
Right.
as coincidence as it may be, it just leaves you thinking.
Yeah.
So you're now in which you're now made almost whole. And so
Right.
did you end up, you know, my assumption is you're like, you didn't want to go to court anyway. You don't want to deal. So drop the case, move on. And
yeah, I really debated that. I really did want to go to court just to kind of see what they had to say. Because being small claims, they couldn't send an attorney to represent them. So they were going to have to send some other representative. And I mean, I felt like as far as arguing damages and interest and, you know, all the time I'd spent trying to get this back, I felt like I had a pretty good argument, since in the end they did have my money the entire time and just were unwilling to return it for almost a year. So I definitely thought about for a day or so of going to court and just, you know, arguing the damages and you know, the time and money spent trying to get it all back. So I was super busy at my business at that point. And so taking a day out of the office was kind of worn out on that decision. So I did end up dropping it. Especially I'd heard some of the stories that they were able to, some of the other small claims cases, they were able to file things and delay court dates and make you come back for multiple dates. And so if it was going to turn out to something like that, I figured probably best just to leave it as it was. But
yeah. Well, so I think the part of the situation, because I'm in a similar boat to you, I think my wife hasn't gotten a penny back, and the friends I recommended to sign up also haven't gotten a penny back. So it's kind of, I still have the weight of that on me. But I think part of the story is the way it's told is everyone got their money frozen, but they ended up getting it back. And, you know, and then here's how it goes. But the year of losing a significant amount of money, it, like, I have gray hairs on my chin from that year. And I tried to put it, you know, some thought into what the opportunity cost was of what did I miss out on, or what did, you know, did you have, was there a day where you're like, ugh, if I had that 13 grand, this would be a very easy decision?
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, I don't have as many a tough a story as some of the other ones I've heard. There was definitely some stressful situations going through where, I mean, that was our emergency fund basically. And so, you know, one of my daughters had to have surgery. And so it was a little bit of unknown on costs of all those types of things. Having that there definitely would have been a lot more comfortable going through that process. Had another child get braces. Again, that would have been very well appreciated to have it during that process. You know, home wise, we didn't have any major air conditioners or water tanks or anything like that going out. I mean, that was our emergency fund for home breakdowns or car breakdowns or things like that. And we, like I said, we dodged a bullet. We didn't really have anything that came up that we absolutely needed it. But that definitely living with very little safety net for a year was more stressful than it had been in the past. So
yeah, I can relate. Well, I appreciate you telling your story. I'm glad it's nice when there's a happy ending of sorts. But I think it's important that as many people hear what you had to go through, because the happy ending only happened in one day. The rest of the time, it was not going to happen. So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. And there's so many people out there that sounds like that are still in tough situations. So whatever we can do to, you know, get some eyes on the situation, hopefully someday get those people made whole as well. So
yeah. Well, Nick, I appreciate you telling your story and participating here, and I'm happy to hear your outcome. And thanks for letting us share your story.
Absolutely. Thanks, sir.
All right. Take care.
Bye.